welcome to the 101 on Sports. I'm Randy Karraker. It's great to have you with us here on Fox 2, and it's always great to talk to a great friend, one of three people who is a Pro Football Hall of Famer and is a member of the Pete Rozelle Radio and TV Award-winning club, along with Frank Gifford and Len Dawson. The Hall of Famer and one of St. Louis's favorites, Dan Dierdorf, joins us on the 101 on Sports. Dan, it's always great to see you. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great, Randy. How are you?
Good. And for people that aren't aware of it, you still spend a lot of time in St. Louis, but the summers when it's 100 degrees here are up in Michigan.
Yes, St. Louis is still home, and we're there the majority of the year. But yeah, in May, I relocate. We're up here in northern Michigan. We're above the 45th parallel, so it's comforting to know I'm actually closer to the North Pole than I am the equator.
Exactly.
Yeah, the temperatures reflect that. A nice summer day up here is in the upper 70s.
Beautiful, beautiful. Dan, I was thinking about you and thinking about years, because I have a tendency to do this, but it's 40 years since you retired in 1983. It's 35 years since your team, the Arizona Cardinals, played their first year in Phoenix. And favorite of both of ours, Don Coryell, long overdue, going into the Hall of Fame this year, but 50 years since Don Coryell took over the football Cardinals. First of all, I want you to comment on him finally getting his due as a Hall of Famer.
Well, he's been close for so long, and it's always bittersweet when someone gets elected and they're no longer with us. And it's a shame that Don isn't alive to experience this firsthand, but for his family and everybody that played for him and the huge number of coaches and NFL insiders that know the impact that Don had on the game, we're all really thrilled.
What was your first impression of Don Coryell? Because he wasn't the typical NFL coach. He'd come from San Diego State. He actually sent a letter, for people that aren't aware, sent a letter to Bill Bidwell requesting that he get an opportunity to be the coach. So he shows up. You're in your third year in the NFL. What were your impressions?
Well, you used the word typical, and you're right. There was nothing typical about Don Coryell. None of us, I can't speak for everybody. I'll speak for myself. Having played for Bo Schembechler at Michigan, and then my first 2 years in the NFL for Bob Hallway, who was a real disciplinarian and a stickler for you got to be here at exactly this time and yada, yada, yada. All of a sudden, here comes Don Coryell, and he was only concerned with your performance on the football field. He did not want to get overwhelmed with the minutia of do you have to eat breakfast? Do you have to eat lunch? He didn't have time for that. And it was such an unbelievable breath of fresh air. We just responded to it immediately. We'd have run through a brick wall for the guy.
What made him such a good coach? What X's and O's wise? What did he bring to you guys?
Well, he had an aggressive offensive mindset. When I was in my early years in the NFL was predominantly a running league. I don't have the percentages in front of me, but I'm going to say it was probably 65-35 run versus pass. Maybe 60-40. But the fact is, Don turned that on its ear. Nobody threw the. I mean, I don't want to sound like I played in the dark ages or something, but you didn't throw the ball on first down. You ran it. You tried to get yourself into a 2nd and 6, 2nd and 5 by running the ball. Don went, well, I'll throw it on first down. I'll throw it on 4th down. I don't care.
And the way you guys blocked under Jim Hannafin really bothered Landry and the Cowboys too, right?
Well, it bothered everybody because Hannafin, from the very beginning said, show me where it says that defensive linemen are tougher than offensive linemen. Show me where it says an offensive lineman has to be passive in what they do. I don't care if you're going backwards blocking, which of course, it's kind of unnatural to pass block. You're dropping backward, you're giving ground, but at the same time, you're not supposed to give any ground. And Hannafin just said, I don't buy it. We're going to be the aggressor. We're going to be the bad guys. And of course, there were a couple people here that ate that up.
And Dan, because of that aggressiveness and because of both the way Jim Hannafin and Don Coryell approached things and the way that you guys won, because you came back and won a lot of games, became the Cardiac Cardinals, so you knew you were going to win. A term that's used a lot today is swagger. Would you say in the mid-'70s that the football Cardinals had swagger?
Yeah, well, offensively we had swagger. Yeah. I don't think we had a lot of defensive swagger.
No.
No offense to all my friends who played on the other side of the ball, but it was, yes, offensively, we knew we were good and we had an attitude and it, looking around that huddle, and when you're looking at Jim Hart and Terry Metcalf and Jim Otis and Mel Gray and Jackie Smith and J.V. Kane, we were confident, and why wouldn't we be?
Yeah, remarkable. Dan Dierdorf with us on the 101 on Sports here on Fox 2. More coming up. Dan retired 40 years ago, and we're going to talk about that career.
Stop it, will you?
Sorry, Dan, but I'm a numbers guy. It's next on the 101 on Sports here on Fox 2. Welcome back to the 101 on Sports here on Fox 2. Randy Karraker with you, and Hall of Famer Dan Dierdorf, kind enough to join us. Well, Dan is
how many years ago all this stuff happened. I'm getting ready to lie down and take a nap here.
We'll make it sound a little less harsh, okay? It was 1983 that Dan Dierdorf played his final game in the National Football League. We aren't gonna put any numbers on this, but man, you had a fun career. And everybody says, every former athlete says, what I miss most is the locker room and the camaraderie. And man, you guys, especially your offensive line, you had a lot of fun playing, didn't you?
Yeah, we really did. People ask me about what was it like being in a city like St. Louis and playing for the Cardinals, which, let's be realistic, no one would list as one of the glamour franchises then or now. But we were in an era that was dominated by, teams like Pittsburgh and Dallas and the Raiders and they go, well, was it frustrating for you? And my response would be, well, I only knew the world as I knew it, which is where I was, which was at Busch Stadium in St. Louis, Missouri. But what I had going on was, I know there were a lot of guys who played in the NFL that didn't have as much fun and enjoyed it as much as I did because of the strength of the personalities that were in our locker room. We were some collection of people, from Jim Bakken to Jackie Smith to Jim Otis. And I'm not even getting into Conrad and Tom, but Randy, we were some group of larger than life characters.
And we still talk here in St. Louis. First of all, I think the football Cardinals are actually more revered and fondly remembered here in St. Louis than the Rams, who won the Super Bowl, are, in large part because people were introduced to fun and exciting football by you guys. But we also remember Dierdorf, Dobler, Banks, Young, Finney. Everybody remembers those five names of the Great Wall in St. Louis. And I watched you guys play, and I have to believe that at the very worst, you're tied for first as the best offensive lines ever. You did remarkable work up front.
Thank you, Randy. We were good. We were really well coached. We were obviously in a very strong offensive game planning type of scenario because of Don's brilliance. And, let's be realistic in those meetings. It's Don Coryell, it's Jim Hanifin, it's Joe Gibbs, it's Rod Dahauer. There were a lot of brilliant offensive minds putting together our game plans. But yeah, that line was special. And I want to give a shout out to a group. When we first got started, we were, at least in my mind, we were just continuing a tremendous tradition that the football Cardinals had in St. Louis with their offensive line. And I'm talking about the line of Ernie McMillan and Bob Reynolds, Irv Goody, Bob DeMarco, and Ken Gray. I mean, these guys were outstanding. And, they kind of handed the baton to us, and we were glad to take it.
Were you ever at a point, because you've mentioned the deficiencies of the defense, were you ever at a point, though, where you guys were good enough? You go 10-4, 11-3, 10-4, where you thought, man, we are close to being a Super Bowl team?
Well, yeah, I mean, but it sounds ridiculous in hindsight because, I tell people this, and when I say people, people who didn't really follow the St. Louis Cardinals at that point in time, when I tell them that I played 13 years in the NFL and I never even won a playoff game.
Yeah.
They go, did you play in a Super Bowl? I go, play in a Super Bowl? I don't know what it's like to win a playoff game. And, you look back at that and you go, wow, to have that kind of talent. But we just, defensively, we were never strong enough to be a serious contender. That's, there's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Right. But it's amazing. Think about this. The Bengals just got their second Hall of Famer after Anthony Munoz. Ken Riley made the Hall of Fame. And the football Cardinals, in their 28 years here, had yourself, Larry Wilson, Jackie Smith, Roger Worley, 4 Hall of Famers in those 28 years, and way more than a franchise that's had pretty much success, been to a couple of Super Bowls like Cincinnati. The level of talent here, especially offensively, when you look back, it was pretty amazing.
Well, I think we have more Hall of Famers in Denver.
Yeah.
Yes. And, other than Roger, you can't look back at it without some level of frustration that, boy, what did we leave on the table? Wow. A couple strategic moves here. And, we got to go back. We might as well go back and go to the day that it all began to unravel. And that was draft day of 1977. Where Don, back then, the coaches, Don Coryell wasn't even allowed in the room when the draft was taking place. Can you imagine that?
No.
I mean, the coaches weren't even allowed to participate in the draft in any way. But Don, who was an offensive guy from the beginning to the end, wanted to draft a linebacker in the first round of 1977. He wanted to draft Robin Cole, I believe out of New Mexico or New Mexico State, who ended up having a fine career with the Steelers. And George Boone drafted Steve Pizarkowicz, the quarterback from Mizzou. And that was, if you could go back and say, what caused this tremendous implosion, that was it. That was the finger on the button that set it all off.
Do you think and I know there was a lot there because Terry Metcalf left after that season. Obviously, Don Coryell left after that season. But if Bill Bidwell decides to promote Jim Hanifin at that point rather than hire Bud Wilkinson, are things different?
No, I don't think so. The damage that was caused by that was because you're right. Metcalf, Terry deserved a new contract, couldn't get it. Terry did everything for us. That one, I think it was 75, where he scored a touchdown 5 different ways.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he ran a punt back for a touchdown. He ran a kickoff back for a touchdown. He caught a touchdown pass. He ran for a touchdown, and he threw a touchdown on a halfback option. And, Don Coryell lobbied for Terry to get a new contract, and it didn't happen. And you're right. Conrad got traded. We went.
And Dan, you played, as you mentioned, 13 years, but you played 4 years after a debilitating knee injury at Giant Stadium. First of all, you played basically all of your career and practiced all of your career on turf. But the technology, and I've seen your knees, the technology on knee repairs wasn't what it is now. That had a tremendous effect not only on your football career, but on your life, didn't it?
Well, yeah. And most of us are, I'm trying to think of the right word. I almost said crippled, but we're
debilitated.
We've been damaged, big time. And I tell people it wasn't football that did it. It was AstroTurf. It was barbaric that we had to not only play on that, but we practiced on it every day. And we might at Busch Stadium, because it was a dual purpose stadium, they couldn't put a pad under it. So it really was just indoor, outdoor carpeting, rolled over asphalt. And we might as well have been practicing on the parking lot at West County Center. It wouldn't have made any difference to us. And unbeknownst to all of us at the time, we were getting ground to dust.
Tough question, but I'm sure you've thought about it. If put back in that situation in 1983 or 71 when you got drafted and somebody said, okay, Dan, you can do this again, but it's going to be under the same circumstances with the turf. Would you have done it?
Oh, well, yeah, because I to not have done it would have meant that I didn't play in the National Football League. So,
right,
yeah. So, no, I don't sit around and whine and complain, but I also am aware enough that I have a lot of friends around the league who played for teams that had grass fields and who practiced on grass every day, and they don't look like we look. They're not hobbling around the way that all of us are, and that's just a reality. Physically, I would be a different person if I'd have been drafted by the Dolphins or the Raiders or the Rams.
No doubt. Dan Dierdorf with us. We're going to head down the stretch here. Dan played a big role in us trying to keep teams or get teams here in St. Louis. And as we head down the stretch, we're going to talk to Dan about that here on the 101 on Sports here on Fox 2. Welcome back to the 101 on Sports. Hall of Famer Dan Dierdorf with us, and it's always great to have you with us on Fox 2 as well. Dan, let's head down the stretch here. You were the chairman of the CVC in the mid-2000s, right? 2005, 6, 7, 8, that era.
Right.
And you told Bernie Miklasz and I on the radio, I think it was like 06 or 07, and this is 8 years before the Rams left. You said, we better start thinking about a new stadium now. Did you have an inkling then that the franchise might leave St. Louis?
Well, the Rams, when they came to St. Louis, signed a lease that was a 30-year lease, but it was broken into 10-year segments. And the clause was in that contract that the quote unquote top tier, we all got to find out what that was, but that the stadium in St. Louis had to remain in the top tier, which was at the time the top 8 stadium in the NFL. And the reality was, at the end of the first 10-year mark, when I have to talk to John Shaw about the Rams, what they need and all this and all that, the Rams could have left then.
Wow.
The Rams could have left then. And the only reason they didn't was because they didn't have anywhere to go. Not in 2005. They didn't have. So for $30,000, for $30 million, we did a number of upgrades to the dome. They put in the ribbon boards and all this and all that. And John Shaw committed them for the next 10 years. Okay. Now, if they could have left after 10, well, just think what the stadium, where it ranked after 20 years. So I knew when we signed that extension, that the day agreed to stay, they were going to be free agents. They were going to be free to go, and no amount of ribbon boards or new concession stands was going to make a difference. The only thing that would have made a difference was a new stadium. So in my mind, I knew darn well that if the Rams found some place to go, they were going to go.
Yeah. Our biggest mistake, in my opinion, as a community with the NFL was not building a stadium for Mr. Bidwell. I'm convinced that the football Cardinals would have been very happy with a football-only facility. At that time, back in, 1986, 1987, it didn't cost as much. Do you agree with me that was our best opportunity? If we were going to have an NFL team in 2023, it was going to be the football Cardinals.
It was a terrible, terrible mistake by the powers that be in St. Louis to let the Cardinals leave town. They didn't want to leave. They weren't, let's be realistic. Stan Kroenke wanted to leave. Stan Kroenke wanted to leave, and nothing we could have done could have kept the Rams here in St. Louis. Bill Bidwell did not want to leave. He wanted to stay. And the guy who really had his finger on the pulse was the then county executive, Gene McNary. And Gene proposed building a stadium out in Earth City, an open air stadium for the Cardinals. And everybody just laughed at him, beginning with Vince Shamel and the city administration. And it was a shame. It was a real shame, because looking back on it, the Cardinals should still be playing professional football in St. Louis.
Well, thank you, Dan. I greatly appreciate the time. It's always good to talk to you and hear your voice and see your face, and we'll see each other in person soon.
All right. Thanks, Randy. And let's talk to Chuck in Alton.
We've done that before. We have done that before.
Yes, we have.
We'll see you later, Dan. Take care.
All right, Randy. Bye-bye.
Our thanks to Dan Dierdorf for joining us here on the 101 on Sports. Always great to talk to the Pro Football Hall of Famer and Pete Rozelle Award winner, and a great person to have in St. Louis. And thanks to you for joining us. We'll see you next week here on Fox 2.